Welcome to the Multiply Your Success podcast, where each week we help growth-minded entrepreneurs and franchise leaders take the next step in their expansion journey. I'm your host, Tom Dufour, CEO of Big Sky Franchise Team, and as we open today, I'm wondering if you are interested in maybe franchising your business, but wondering when the right time is to do so. Or maybe you recently franchised and you're faced with some challenges. Well, our guest today is Michele Henry, and she shares with us her miss of not franchising with her first business and her make of inviting the right franchisees into her system. Now, Michele grew up in a family of entrepreneurs and knew from a young age that she wanted to follow in their footsteps. Following the birth of her third child, Michele struggled to find skincare treatments that address the challenges in her skin caused by hormone shifts, age, pregnancies, and life's demands. This prompted her mission to fill a void in the aesthetics market. From inception, FACE Foundrié was designed to be a franchise concept empowering entrepreneurs to grow and scale their business through FACE Foundry's franchise opportunities. Michele has received multiple accolades, having been named Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year and profiled in Forbes. She's a member of the Young President Organization, YPO, and serves on the board of directors. Michele was recognized on the Minnesota 40 Under 40, and FACE Foundrié is also ranked as the 35th fastest growing private company in the Midwest by Inc. magazine. You're going to love this interview, so let's go ahead and jump right into it.
Happy to be here. Thank you, Tom. My name is Michele Henry. I am the founder and CEO of FACE Foundrié, and we are a focused facial bar and the franchisor of now 56 locations across the country.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations on your growth and the expansion you've had. And we always like having franchise guests on to talk about their franchise journey and part of what they've done. And our business, we kind of are in this threshold or precipice between an entrepreneur and franchising and kind of teeter-totter between them. I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about your journey to starting your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to take you way back. I actually grew up in a family business, and it was the best education I could have ever had because I learned a lot about entrepreneurship and what it took. And my parents worked super hard. My dad actually still owns that business, and I lived it, I breathed it. I worked for him for almost 13 years. It's an in-ground pool company. So learned a ton. Fast forward, I ended up starting a clothing company and we grew organically. We ended up servicing about 1 million women over our tenure and grew it to about 25 million in sales. The day I sold that company, I gave myself 5 minutes. So I signed the purchase agreement for that company, and I had 5 minutes. I walked downstairs. I signed the lease for the Galleria FACE Foundrié, which was our flagship location. And I knew whatever I did next, it had to be a franchise because I absolutely love that model. I love being able to meet really inspired, excited individuals that want to be entrepreneurs, that want that roadmap to success. And that was really important. So I really charted out a path to make sure that we could franchise FACE Foundrié from day one. So we wrote down all of our operations. We made sure that we had a really nice roadmap. And oddly enough, we went to go franchise. We had a year's worth of data, and it was March 1st, 2020. So you can probably guess the timing was impeccable. I'm kidding. That's a joke. COVID hit.
Oh my goodness gracious. Wow. Talk about, like you said, timing for your business model. That's incredible. So what'd you do then when you hit the crossroads?
Yeah, we had 2 corporate locations open. The whole idea was to have a proof of concept. So I ideally wanted 3 locations in different various trade areas. We had to pause. We actually were mandated by the state of Minnesota, like many others, to close down. And it ended up being, several months before we could open back up. And it was such a, guessing game. When are we going to be able to open? In hindsight, it was such a blessing in disguise because we kind of reestablished all of our operating manuals, all of our training to be online. So it really was able to catapult us, and we were able to jumpstart when we did launch franchising again. It was very fast and furious. We sold the state out in 30 days. We ended up selling, 34 units very quickly in that first year. So blessing in disguise, but hindsight's everything, right?
Absolutely. And that's really, really rapid growth that you share. And with 34 units coming on in 1 year, one question I'm always curious about is how you manage that, especially as a brand new franchisor. That kind of growth I've seen actually crush franchise systems. And obviously that did not happen with you all. So how did you respond to that growth to make sure you could support the franchisees that were coming on board?
I think it's with any business, you have to have a really strong team and a strong team that can understand what their role and responsibility is. And that was just very important. We are very fortunate. I think our team is world class. They are such hard workers. They have that kind of small business mentality. They feel a sense of ownership. So I would bring it back to our team is phenomenal and they understand what growing pains might look like and they help work through as a team to make our system better.
As you launched this business, the plan was to franchise right from the get-go. So I know you mentioned you knew you wanted to franchise, but how did you decide that, or what led you to be so certain that was what you wanted to do?
That's a great question, Tom. So I touched on this. My previous business, it was a women's clothing chain. We grew it debt-free, it was very bootstrapped, and we explored franchising with that business model very early on. And there was a lot of long conversations. Is this the concept to franchise? What are the nuances? And I learned a lot about franchising through that process and understanding, actually, this isn't the right concept to franchise. In turn, I think then I really fell in love with the franchising model in general. So I love that I could read FDDs and I started to become obsessed. If there was a franchise concept that caught my eye, I was paging through, nighttime reading. 200 pages later, I'm reading these FDDs and learning what makes a strong concept and what doesn't, and how could I apply this in the future for future businesses. So I think I learned a lot in that process that we eventually didn't pull the trigger on with that model, but it was a learning process for sure.
You definitely are the exception to the rule. It's rare to find entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs that are willing to and interested in reading the FDDs, and many of them. It is not light reading. So kudos to you on making that commitment to do that. That's wonderful. As you've talked about growing your over 50 units and continuing to expand, and you talked about your great team that's in place, will you share a little bit about maybe some of the types of roles and things that you have your team doing to support the growth of your franchise system, to make sure that those franchisees are not just opening, but the goal is that they open and they sustain and hopefully thrive long term. So talk through that if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that our system and the way we operate, we take our franchisees through every single process and meet them where they're at. So I think that's something that's really unique, and our ability to go in and work with a franchisee. If they have a marketing background, great, we can build off of that. If they don't, wonderful. Let's take a few steps back and let's start the process from, square one. Same with build outs. I think it's so important. Our head of development actually built out, he worked for SEB brands for a long time. So Self-Esteem Brands, Wax in the City. He also built out a lot of Caribou's. He knows start to finish what it takes to open a FACE Foundry. And having that person in your corner, especially as a new franchisee, especially if you've never, ever built out a retail store before, that's a huge asset. And he breaks it down step by step. And so that project management is crucial. And I think it just starts you out on the right foot so you can really focus then on your operations. Most people think, okay, they hear FACE Foundry, they hear we're a facial bar. They might assume, okay, I have to be an esthetician or have some sort of skincare background. That's actually not the case. I would say very few of our franchisees come from the aesthetics world. And what's wonderful is we have a great team that teaches our franchisees what to look for when they are hiring, when they are training, when they are doing test outs. All of that is spelled out for them. So you really do leave and feel like you have an honorary degree in aesthetics, and you can then jumpstart your business from there. On top of that, I would say what's really unique is we have quarterly coaching conversations where we can come in and help develop your team if they need refreshers on say, membership sales or how to approach products. We are trying to touch on every single level. And so marketing is always going, that's always in the background. Development is always going, that's in the forefront. But making sure that no matter where our franchisees are at, we are able to fill those gaps or areas of opportunities.
You mentioned a word that stood out to me in terms of being unique. And I always like to ask, in terms of your business model, what are some of the things that differentiate your business or make your company unique?
Oh, so many, Tom. I would say, first of all, what's really attractive is our price point. I think we surprise and delight clients with the level of service that we offer, knowing that it is an approachable price point. Most people think of going to the spa or getting a facial, and they think of that kind of special birthday celebration or once a year celebration. And truly what we've been able to do is disrupt that industry and offer monthly memberships that are very, very price conscious and make sure that we're awarding and really surprising people with our level of services with our estheticians. So I think that's first and foremost. We offer consistency too. I think that's very important. What we found in our competitor set is that you can go to different spas or facial bars and it's an inconsistent experience. And we've really taken our client journey and broken it down to make sure that if you get a service in Sioux Falls or Sarasota, it's the exact same thing and you know exactly what to expect as a client.
One question I always like to ask every franchisor that comes on the show at this stage is what advice you would give to an emerging franchisor that's launching, that's maybe trying to sell their first 5, 10, 20 franchises. You saw some rapid growth as you first launched. What advice would you give to someone?
I always love this question, right? Because I think that looking back, you can pull so much information as to what you wish you would have done. One thing I feel like I was fortunate to have from the jump, a fantastic franchise attorney that understands what growth would look like. So having an FDD that's something that you can understand and that you can answer all of the questions because you're going to get a lot of them, right, from potential franchisees. So having amazing counsel is first and foremost. It goes back to that team mentality. Make sure your team is fantastic. On that same note, making sure that you know your numbers, understand your business. And that goes hand in hand. If you are an entrepreneur and you understand your business, you have to know your numbers because the FDD is an open book, right? And everybody gets to see your numbers and see where sales come from and see, obviously, at the end of the day, what your net income is. So knowing those numbers are crucial. I think those are 2 call outs.
How can someone get in touch with you or learn a little bit more about what you're doing, or if they might listen to this, say, hey, I'm interested?
Absolutely. So if you go on the FACE Foundry website, Foundry is spelled with an IE at the end. So facefoundry.com. There is a franchising tab. You'll be able to flip through our franchising book. You'll be able to see our sites, different locations we have, all of the benefits of being an owner. And you will also see a contact page. That's probably the best way to do it.
Well, this is a great time in the show, Michele, and we make a transition and we ask every guest the same 4 questions before they go. And the first question we ask is, have you had a miss or 2 on your journey and something you learned from it?
Yeah, I'll touch on a miss that I had very early on. I committed to a new product that I really wanted to push. It was this beautiful gua sha stone set, and we had to commit to a huge number of them. So flying them over, it was very costly. And we ended up really missing on that. And that product launch just did not take. And I think that was a miss that, I learned very early in that process that overcommitting to too high of a quantity of products can really drown you. And it's a capital suck and a time suck. And so beta testing something on a smaller scale, aim small, miss small, I think that's crucial. And so keeping that mindset, it's hard because, of course, as an entrepreneur and as a dreamer and as a visionary, you want to just take comfort in this idea is going to blow it out of the water. And I think taking a step back and understanding that, there's real capital constraints if you aim too big, and ultimately time constraints.
Well, let's look at the flip side of this. Let's talk about a highlight, a win, or a make that you'd like to share.
I would say the make has been inviting brilliant franchisees into our system. I can't give enough credit to the franchisees that have come in, and they've come in from other brands or they've owned their own businesses. Either way, they have been instrumental in building FACE Foundry into what it is today. So I definitely think that the make would be the franchisees that we have in FACE Foundry.
Well, and you used a really interesting word there, the franchisees that you invited into your system. And I love that, is keeping this focused on an award you're granting or awarding or allowing folks to come into the system. I think that's the right mindset. Well, let's talk about a multiplier. The name of the show is Multiply Your Success. Have you used a multiplier to grow yourself personally, professionally, or any of the organizations you've run?
You know what? Actually, the multiplier that comes to mind, truthfully, is a group that I'm a part of. And I have gained so many mentors through this group. And it's a leadership group that has really challenged me to continue to grow and change my thought process around business in general. So it's called YPO. And I don't know if you've heard of it before, but it's truly changed my life. And the people you surround yourself with and their mentality really does get absorbed into who you become. And I think that's so important, to surround yourself with like-minded, positive people. And YPO has done just that for me. So I'm very, very gracious and grateful.
Networking groups, mastermind groups, these leadership groups that, like a YPO, and there are others out there, and finding the right fit is so critical. I think that's great. Well, Michele, the final question we ask every guest is, what does success mean to you?
I would say success to me is how my kids view me as a mother, as a business owner, as a parent. I think about success, and to me, it's a synonym for legacy. And the legacy I want to leave behind is hopefully inspiring confidence through, obviously, our facial bars, through FACE Foundry, being able to build legacies with our franchisees and our staff members, but ultimately being able to build a legacy that my kids are proud of. So I would say they're very much intertwined.
Michele, thank you so much for a fantastic interview. And let's go ahead and jump into today's 3 key takeaways. So takeaway number 1 is when she talked about when she knew she wanted to franchise. And she said she knew she had missed the opportunity with her first company that she started. So when she launched her second business, she came into it with the mindset of franchising right from the get-go. Takeaway number 2 is when she gave some advice to emerging franchisors, and she said, find a quality franchise attorney and know your numbers. I thought that was great. And by the way, part of what we do with our company is make sure we refer you and get you connected with some great franchise attorneys as part of the process. Takeaway number 3 is what she defined as success, and I loved her view of it. She said success is how her kids view her and building a legacy her kids are proud of. And now it's time for today's win-win. So today's win-win is when she said she made sure, and this was her make, that she made sure she invited the right franchisees to join her system. And I loved how she chose that word, invited the right franchisees to join her system. That's a win for her. It's a win for the franchisees as well, because it's the right match for both of them to be pairing up together. And so that's the episode today, folks. Please make sure you subscribe to the podcast and give us a review. And remember, if you or anyone you know might be ready to franchise their business or take their franchise company to the next level, please connect with us at bigskyfranchiseteam.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to having you back next week.